The Metis Tech Show.
Welcome to the Metis Tech Show, a show for HVAC professionals by HVAC professionals.
I like how you guys bounce back and forth between heat pump talk and food talk.
The Metis Tech Show.
It's so busy.
All right, so last night we're still at the ESCO show in Vegas, and last night, rather than give us dinner, or before dinner, I guess we could say, they came around with these hors d'oeuvres.
Yep.
Did you guys try them?
Yes.
Okay, what was your favorite one?
My favorite was shrimp tempura.
Shrimp tempura. That was okay. I just don't know how they got the shrimp to be like 6 inches long.
It was pressed with an iron,
Really?
like a commercial press, like a dry cleaner.
All right. I don't know what it was, but it was good. You know, and they had these little mini beef Wellingtons. They were delicious. Now, the one thing, I'm dying to make a beef Wellington. I haven't tried it. I haven't even looked into it. I have no idea where to start. But it seems like to me it's complicated. But I am going to make one someday.
Yeah.
Have you made one?
No, yes, I've tried, but I didn't do it the traditional way. So I had some steaks and I seared them and wrapped them in puff pastry and baked them. But after looking into what actual beef Wellington is, there is a layer between the beef and the puff pastry.
Yeah.
Right.
And it's we looked it up last night. It's what was it? Some mushrooms and there was one other thing. Now I can't remember what it is.
Mustard?
Mustard. Yes,
Mustard.
thank you. Yeah, it was
Mustard.
mustard. And then there was like a Duxelles mushrooms, which I've never heard of.
Yeah, well, I would say I didn't taste any mushrooms in last night's mini little beef Wellingtons,
Yeah.
but mushrooms have no flavor anyway, so
I don't agree.
no, they have no flavor whatsoever.
You have to have a mouthful to taste them.
Yeah, it's like I need a gross of mushrooms to be able to taste the hint.
Oh.
But I don't hate mushrooms. They're just not my
I
favorite
love
things,
them.
but there's no flavor.
No.
And then they had these little meatballs, little barbecue meatballs. Those were good, a little sweet. The barbecue sauce was a little sweet. And then they had these things you guys were ragging on me about. So it was a little flower petal, a little purple flower petal. It was long. It was about 3 inches long. And it looks like they put cream cheese and softened it up and put it in one of those things like you decorate a cake with.
Yep.
And they squeezed it out lengthwise onto this little flower petal. And then they put candied walnuts on there. And I ate it.
Yeah.
And the flower petal and everything.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure if you're supposed to eat the flower petal, but to me, I could taste the candied walnuts, the cream cheese. I couldn't taste anything. And then the flower petal I felt like, I sprayed my mouth with air freshener.
I'm sure it tasted better than the mushrooms.
Yeah. Well, the mushrooms, like I said, have no taste. So it wasn't horrible, but it was like, okay, that was interesting. And then you guys said maybe you weren't supposed to eat the flower, which I don't think so because it was on there. It was stuck.
Right.
Yeah.
No, there's certain
On there.
flowers you can eat.
Yes.
I'm sure you can eat every flower.
Yeah.
It's a vegetable, I think, isn't it? It's a flower.
It's not a vegetable. It's a flower.
Okay, is a dandelion a vegetable?
No.
I don't know what classifies a vegetable.
Me neither.
I thought it was just something without seeds.
I thought it was just everything that's not meat.
Yeah, I wasn't sure if you were supposed to eat the flour, but then somebody else had come around with a tray, and it was those cheese. It was like almost looked like a skewer, and there was some.
Oh,
stuff
yes.
on it.
That was
roasted
good.
red pepper, maybe.
Yeah,
I
and
couldn't
a
tell exactly. What
roasted
it was.
red pepper, and it had some fresh mozzarella cheese, and I forget what else was on there.
Yeah.
But that had little orchids, I think little purple orchids as
Yes.
a garnish.
Yes, and so
Right.
we had asked the lady who was walking around with that food tray, what type of flower is that? And she confirmed it was an orchid. And then we asked, are you supposed to eat it? And she said, oh, no. So,
Well, here's the thing.
You should have seen her face when she said that.
I don't think a chef would garnish something, would use a garnish that's not edible.
I agree.
I mean, you garnish with parsley, you garnish with an orange or a lemon. So I think whatever they're going to garnish with has to be edible because they have to believe there's people like me who will eat everything that's put in front of them.
yes, edible for sure. Intended to be eaten, maybe not.
No, maybe not.
Because here's the thing, right? That with oysters, right? You don't eat the shell just because the oyster is
Right, you
in it
can't,
as
yeah.
a vessel doesn't mean you eat the shell. So
Right.
the flower petal sometimes can be used as just
Yeah.
your slider,
Yeah,
But-
I don't think that was the case. I really think you're supposed to eat them. Because you know what? On the tray, it was half gone.
yeah.
There was no place to put the unused or the uneaten
Sure.
petal. So
Okay.
Hey, but look at the flip side. You're here.
Yeah.
Oh, so
And
far.
you are glowing.
Yeah.
You look
Yeah.
like an orchid.
You don't
Yeah.
look pale
Beautiful
or
orchid.
anything.
So I ate vegan last night, except for the meatballs and the beef Wellington.
Yeah.
Yeah, so beef Wellington's on my list of things to try. It just seems, I don't know, but the little mini ones were good, but it just seems like I want to make a real one
Yeah.
and see how it comes out. And then I'll decide whether it's worth it or not. My wife will
Makes
probably
sense.
hate it.
Cool.
She just keeps saying she doesn't like meat.
Oh,
Well, I'm sure if you bring them to the office, they'll get eaten.
Oh, yeah. Steve and I, a couple of weeks ago, were in Atlanta at a golf club for an event, and they had those mini beef Wellingtons. And which one of us, out of all of us on the team, who usually gets food on their shirts?
You.
Me.
Yeah.
Every time.
Yeah.
It's only a matter of time. Although Steve had some drops on there. He goes, I hope that's really the condensation from my water. And, an hour later, it's still there. I go, no, it's beef Wellington juice.
Wellington juice.
All right. Anyway, welcome everybody to the Metis Tech Show. I am Paul Shavs. Joining me today is Bryn Raptor. Bryn, say hi.
Hi.
All right. And once again, Juan Cardona.
Howdy.
Right. So, like I said, we're at the ESCO HVAC Excellence show in Las Vegas. We're in Las Vegas.
Las Vegas. Yeah,
at the East Point Resort. It snowed last night at home. I looked at my cameras this morning. There's a dusting of snow on the ground. And here, the temperature today is supposed to break a record for March. It's supposed to be 96 degrees.
Yep. It's going to be a hot one.
Gonna be
And
nice.
and I was thinking I'm coming down with a cold. My sinuses are all dry. I haven't left the hotel, but we're in the middle of a desert.
Yeah.
They're not adding humidity.
No, it's just dry.
It's just dry.
Yep.
So
I woke up the last 2 mornings with a stuffy nose or like that really dry
Yeah.
nose feeling, and I realized I'm like, it's just the different climate.
Right.
yeah, and they're not
moisture in the
and they're not adding humidity in anything. So why would they?
And yesterday I was in the pool. Took me like 5 minutes to dry off. I didn't even use a towel.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
I got out of the water, sat down on the what do they call them, the beach chair, and literally I could watch my skin drying. I was like, that's insane.
Yeah, my
How
brother-
quick it happens.
My brother used to live in Phoenix, and I went out to visit him, and it's just wicked hot out there. I'm dying, and he goes, "It's a dry heat." I go, "It's 110 degrees. It's a dry heat." I go, "Yeah, if I turn the oven to 110 degrees and put a potato in it, it's going to bake." Anyway, so what are we going to talk about today?
I thought we'd talk about the cooling patterns. We mentioned it a little bit on the last episode.
Yep.
So we're talking about commercial equipment. The R2 system is the one that we're going to discuss. There is some segmenting that goes on with our Y series, but it's much more simplified. So I figured we'd go with the more heavy hitter, the
Yes.
R2 system. We'll talk about the segmenting and the cooling patterns and heating patterns that the system will do based on demand.
Okay, and let's explain what segmenting is for those that don't know.
Yeah, so we have one outdoor coil, but it is split into multiple segments. So in some cases it's 2 segments, in some cases it's 3 segments. And so what we're able to do is actually drain off or isolate a portion of that coil when we are in a mixed mode situation or reduced capacity situation, so that we're not using all of the outdoor coil space for condensing.
Right? It's because it's variable refrigerant flow, and if we don't need all the refrigerant, we don't need the whole condenser.
Right.
So we can actually physically change the size of the condenser, the outdoor unit.
Yes.
And we're going to talk about the R2, as you said, and we're going to talk about the N generation,
Yes.
which is the current generation. It's still out there, plenty of them out there.
Yeah.
And I think we should start off. It's something that hopefully every HVAC contractor knows, but let's start off with the basic refrigerant cycle. And let's just do the 4 needed components. Let's do the compressor, the evaporator, the metering device, and the condenser. So we got a compressor, and a compressor is a vapor pump. It can only pump vapor. Let me rephrase that. It should only pump
It should.
vapor.
It's designed
Right.
to pump vapor.
And coming out of that compressor, we have a high temperature, high pressure, superheated vapor. And that goes into a condenser. And in the condenser, it starts to de-superheat. It then condenses, changes from a vapor to a liquid. And then it subcools beyond that. So coming out of that, we still have a high temperature, high pressure, subcooled liquid.
Yes.
We hit our metering device, which just restricts it, and that's going to have an immediate pressure drop. So now we have a low temperature, low pressure, and this is the one of the phrases that's always bugged me. Some people say saturated vapor. Some people say saturated liquid.
Liquid.
To me, I don't know how you tell which one is which.
Right.
To me, they're the same. It's just saturated refrigerant, right? Which means it exists in both liquid and a vapor state.
Yes.
So, and then it comes in to the evaporator, and both the evaporator and the condenser have air blowing over them, right? And we don't create heat. As everybody knows, we transfer heat.
Right.
So the evaporator is going to absorb the heat. It's going to boil it off. So coming out of the evaporator, we have a low pressure, low temperature, superheated liquid going back into the compressor.
Vapor. Superheated vapor.
Superheated vapor. That's what I said. Did I say
Yes,
liquid?
you did, yeah.
This is what's wrong with me today. That's like the fifth time I've said something that is not what I meant to say.
If you can find out a way to get superheated liquid, you probably could make $1 million off it.
You could.
No, because that would annoy me.
Either
because
that or blow himself up.
It annoys me. It annoys me when people say I have negative superheat. There's no such thing.
No such thing.
It's no such thing. You don't have a negative superheat.
It's unrealistic.
You're reading the wrong temperature.
Yep.
Right. Anyway, I'm sorry. Coming out of the evaporator, it's a low pressure, low temperature, superheated vapor. I guess it's a senior moment.
Yeah, we'll call it that.
Yeah. Okay. So that's basically a basic system with 4 required components in a refrigeration
Yes.
unit.
Yep. And that is really important to know, especially when we start talking about mixed modes and what's coming back from those indoor units, right? Some are in heating, some are in cooling. Well, what's their state of refrigerant coming back to those from those indoor units? So we're going to focus on the outdoor unit. So just the condensing, just first base. That's where we're going to start.
Yeah.
So we have a couple different cooling patterns. So when we are in cooling mode, depending on the size of the system, we have between 3 and 4 patterns. And all we're doing there is, again, we're segmenting off or isolating portions of the outdoor unit coil in order to either reduce capacity or, when we are in mixed modes, provide some high pressure, high temperature, superheated vapor to the indoor units that are in heating mode.
That is correct.
So what I want to do is show, this is our condenser, right? This is first base. So in first base, this is also the cooling pattern 1, which means all indoor units are in cooling.
Yes.
100%.
100% cool.
Yep.
So when you look at our outdoor unit, just like Paul was talking about, out of our compressor, right, we have that high pressure, high temperature, superheated vapor, and we're on our way to our condenser, our heat exchanger. I like to call them indoor and outdoor units because it can condense and it can evaporate with a heat pump.
It's technically not a condenser. It's an outdoor coil.
Depending on the mode.
Right.
Yeah.
Right now we're in cooling only, so it's a condenser.
It's a condenser.
So if we trace that red, if you're watching on YouTube, we actually have it up on the screen. But if you're listening, right out of our compressor, the first stop that we make is through an oil separator, and then we hit 2 reversing valves. One is called 21S4A, one is called 21S4B. Now, Juan, I don't know how you teach this, but the way I describe 21S4A as opposed to 21S4B is that 21S4A is what I call our primary or our main reversing valve.
Yes.
And when I say that, it's because depending on if 21S4A is energized or de-energized is the mode that the system is in.
Absolutely. And that's what I say. That 21S4A is the one reversing valve responsible for reversing the flow of the refrigerant in whether it's in cooling or heating.
Right.
We do energize the reversing valve on the heating mode. So when it's energized, we reversing the flow through it through the system going into the heating mode.
Right.
So that is 21S4A is the primary reversing valve.
Yeah. So that's what what I say is if 21S4A shows that it's energized, we're in heat mode.
Yes.
If it's de-energized, we're in cooling mode.
Correct.
Now, we might still be in mixed modes in either side, but that is the determining factor is if we're sending just hot gas inside or if we're going through our outdoor unit.
Right.
Yeah, and that's the outdoor unit mode, not the system mode.
Correct.
Right, because like you just said, it could be some units could be in heating and some in cooling.
It all depends on the heating demand or heating main.
Yes.
Right. And that's something that switches automatically. There's not something you're going to go do to put it in cooling main or heating main. It's going to decide based on the targets it's trying to reach.
Exactly.
It's going to look at all the sensors that are all over the place, and it's going to decide, okay, I'm going to be in heating main, or I'm going to switch to cooling main. So we don't do anything.
No.
There's no buttons to press.
Right.
There's nothing you click.
And the difference between the two, when you hear cooling main, all that means is that most of the indoor units are in cooling. There's going to be some in heating, but cooling main means that there's more indoor units in cooling mode than there is
Right.
heating, and the heating main is just the opposite.
Is it?
And by more, it's capacity.
It's capacity. I was
Correct.
going to say
It is
it's not.
capacity.
It's not
Yeah,
units.
yeah,
it's
yeah.
capacity.
Right, more capacity.
And that even then is not 100% the case. And the reason I say that is because it isn't a 50-50 where
Right.
you've got 120,000 BTUs. As soon as 61,000 BTUs is calling for heating, it's going to switch.
Right.
That switching is going to determine 100% on what Paul was saying, whether or not we can hit those targets and maintain enough superheat and enough
There
subcooling
you go.
going through that branch controller to satisfy those units. And it makes a decision. At some point, it says, you know what? We're not getting enough superheated gas inside. Let's just switch over to heating mode. And it could be 8 units in or 8 units in heating and 4 in cooling, and it may still be in cooling main.
Yep.
It just
Right.
depends
Good.
on capacity and whether or not it's able to
Sorry.
maintain those targets.
All right. So we're still in cooling pattern 1, which is cooling
Yes.
only. So everything is 100% cooling.
Yep.
The reversing valves are not energized because
Correct.
we're in cooling. We came out of the compressor, a high temperature, high pressure, superheated vapor. Oil separator does what an oil separator does. It's going to go through the reversing valves and it's going to go right to the segmented condenser.
Yes. So we'll see the heat exchanger front and heat exchanger rear. It's one coil. Sometimes it can look confusing, especially I've had questions in classes, is 2 outdoor units. No.
No.
What we're showing is 1 outdoor unit split into its 2 segments. We have
Yep.
the front portion and the rear portion. So right now we're doing 100% of our condensing outside. So we're using 100% of the coil. Out of that coil, we should be a high pressure, high temp, subcooled liquid. And we have LEVs on the outlet of those portions of the heat exchanger, LEV 2A and LEV 2B. And in this case, they're wide open.
Yes.
So one thing that I say is that 21S4B is married to LEV 2B,
Yep.
right? If 21S4B is energized, then LEV 2B is going to close. They work together, and all they're doing is segmenting off the rear portion of that coil.
portion of the coil.
Because we aren't doing any segmenting, the LEV is wide open, 21S4B is de-energized, allowing that flow through that rear portion of the coil.
Yes.
So once we get through those LEVs, we're a high pressure, high temp, subcooled liquid. We go out through our check valve block prior to going to our branch controller. So
One point that I want to make, if they're looking at the piping diagram on 21S4B, typically how many pipes are connected to the reversing valve?
4.
4.
Yep.
So if you look at 21S4B, how many pipes are connected to that reversing valve?
3.
Only 3.
Yeah.
So in essence, we're using the reversing valve as a solenoid valve
Right.
to isolate that one portion of the coil.
Yeah, almost like a diverting valve, like
Yes.
a 3-way valve.
Yeah,
Where we either have a path to our compressor or a path to our accumulator,
absolutely.
just depending on what we're doing. So
All right. And we're not going to go into the BC controller in this episode.
No,
we're just
if anything,
sticking to the
we'll
outdoor
do that
unit.
in another episode. And honestly, even coming back to our outdoor unit, it's pretty straightforward. We're coming back to our reversing valves, back to the accumulator, back to the compressor. Pretty straightforward.
So for those watching on YouTube, and even for those who've seen the diagrams before, can you explain what the little orange X is at the bottom of each hex?
The orange. Oh, so we always maintain some subcooled liquid
Yep.
in our outdoor units,
Yep.
and this is only for the end gen. Well, at least for what we're talking about, because the inverter with our control box configuration, the
Yep.
inverter gets hot.
Yes.
There's switches. They're switching on and off really fast. We all know any switch that is flickering or turning on and off really quickly, it's going to generate some heat.
Yep.
So we always maintain some subcooled liquid in our outdoor unit just to be able to meter some
Yep.
refrigerant to a small evap that's on the backside of
On the
that
back
inverter.
side of the control boards.
Yep. And so LEV9 is the metering device responsible
Yes.
for opening and closing to keep that inverter cool. What I've noticed experientially is that around 175 degrees is when I'll see LEV9 start to meter.
Yeah, and that's one of just a handful of LEVs that will close 100%.
Right.
Typically, we don't close the LEVs 100%.
Yeah. Yeah,
So
absolutely.
it's just a cooling circuit.
Yep.
That's all that is. All right.
So we'll just talk quickly about the pulses on the 3 most important LEVs when it comes to the cooling patterns. LEV 2A is at 3,000 pulses, which is wide open.
Yep.
LEV 2B is at 3,000 pulses, wide open. And then we have LEV 2D, which we'll talk about once we start to get into the other cooling patterns. In this instance, 100% cooling, LEV 2D is closed.
Yes.
And I like going, we had, I think it was Brandon Russell, when we had Brandon on, and Jean Taus. When they look at the LEVs, they break it down into percentages.
Yes.
So if it's a 3,000 pulse and you have 1,500 pulses, is what percentage of 3,000 is 1,500.
That's
Right.
50%.
Yeah, and that makes sense. Now it makes more sense. So that was genius. 'Cause
Yes.
that changed the whole way I look at these things because it makes so much more sense. And the minimum position is it 41?
Yes, in most cases.
Yeah, so 41 is basically closed, but it's the minimum point. It's the lowest
Right.
one you'll ever see.
Yep.
It's helpful, especially when you have something like the branch controller where there are different LEVs, where
Yes.
some are 3,000 pulse, some are 500 pulse. And so, if you're looking at it on maintenance tool and you see one number says 23, but the other one says, 1,800, you're like, what the heck is going on? But then
Right.
if you actually go by percentage, they're about the same.
Yeah.
So that's where it can become helpful.
Yep.
So let's go into cooling pattern 2. Cooling only, cooling main. So what happened here where we went from cooling pattern 1 to cooling pattern 2?
So right here we energize 21S4B,
Mm-hmm.
isolating that the rear portion of the coil, and we're also closing LEV2B, taking it to 41 pulses. So what we're doing is we're isolating that portion of the coil. But if you look at the piping diagram on 21S4B, we're opening that segmented coil to the suction side.
Mm-hmm.
Because the more than likely there's going to be liquid found at that coil. So we're boiling that refrigerant so we can take it and use it elsewhere.
Yep. And so when this would happen would be one of two things. Maybe you have reduced capacity,
Yes.
right?
Yep.
So let's say you've got 120,000 BTUs of outdoor unit capacity, but inside you've only got about 40,000 BTUs calling, 48,000 BTUs
Yes.
calling. That's when you might you might see the segmenting where the system goes, hey, let's ramp down our compressor. Let's boil off a section of that coil. We can slow down our fan and we can satisfy that 48,000 BTUs without having to use all of the coil space.
So this segment is called, 50%.
Yep.
Because the outdoor coil capacity is split to 50%.
Right. Yep. And then the other reason you might see this happen is as soon as one indoor unit goes into heating mode.
Mm.
If there is even one indoor unit in heating mode, this cooling pattern 2 will start.
Yes.
So you could have, 120,000 BTU system and 11 of the 12 indoor units are in cooling.
But because of that one unit calling for heating,
Yep.
what happens to LEV2D?
Yeah, we're going to segment the coil.
Exactly.
LEV2 is going to start to open up. So when we look at the refrigerant flow, 21S4A, right after going through 21S4A, we actually have a branch where we split off from going to the front portion of the hex
Yes.
or to LEV2D.
Correct.
So what I always call LEV2D is the hot gas bypass LEV.
Yep.
It's bypassing the portion of the coil, and it's sending that hot gas right to our high pressure line.
And I ask technicians that. So if you have hot gas coming into the valve, what do you have coming through it?
I know.
And it throws them off
Yep.
because they're thinking TXV.
Right?
So they're thinking it's liquid or it's low pressure on the other side. No, not necessarily.
No.
You have hot gas coming in. You have hot gas coming through it.
Right. Yeah. Is there a phase change when it's already hot gas going through a metering
No,
device?
not at that
necessarily.
point.
Yeah. And so think of LEV2D as more of a modulating valve.
Yes.
Where it's just reducing or increasing the amount of flow of hot gas through that opening.
Yes.
And so we are still using the portion of the front portion of the coil to do our subcooling. That's to satisfy all those indoor units in cooling. But we're now also sending hot gas through that LEV2D. Now in cooling pattern 2, maybe only one indoor unit or maybe two indoor units are in heating. So the LEV isn't wide open. LEV2D is open to 1,000 pulses,
Right.
depending on model. Some are 800. So with that in mind, when they come together, you've got subcooled liquid from our heat exchanger, you've got hot gas coming from LEV2D. What is the state of refrigerant going out of our high pressure line?
Saturated liquid or vapor.
It's just saturated refrigerant.
Yeah. So you end up with a saturated refrigerant.
Yes.
Yeah.
Liquid gas mixture is sometimes what we refer to it as. And the reason for that is because, as we know, we get to our branch controller. It's going to
Yes.
split up.
I mean,
Right.
that unit going for heat has to have hot gas.
Yeah.
Yeah. We
So
need hot
when-
gas for the units in heat. We need subcooled liquid for the units in cooling, and that's it. We can't change those laws.
Right.
Right, yes.
Right.
Yeah, we don't. That's it.
Yep.
I've said this before. there's only one thing that we do, the Mitsubishi equipment does. You know what it is.
Yes.
You know what it is. There's only one thing. We can't change the laws of thermodynamics or how refrigerant works. There's only one thing we do that no one else can do, and the air coming out of our indoor units is fluffier than our competitors, anybody else's. And it's it's a patented thing. It's a secret. We can't explain.
We make fluffy
how that
air.
works. We make fluffier.
Fluffier air. All right, so that's cooling pattern 2. Let's go to cooling pattern 3.
I'm probably going to get a call from legal about that. So cooling pattern 3 is when it can be either cooling only or cooling main, right?
Right.
Yep.
Okay.
So again, we are either severely reduced capacity, but more likely we're in cooling pattern 3 because the demand for heating indoors has increased.
Right.
So we might be at 50-50 here. We might be at 45-55. We're getting close to almost a matched load inside for indoor units and cooling and indoor units and heating. Now, our system is going to avoid switching over to heating for as long as it can.
Correct.
Just to maintain efficiency, right? So it's making that determination through the logic in the system. But because we have more indoor units and heating, what we'll see is our rear segment is still segmented. So LEV2B is closed. 21S4B is energized, giving us a path back to the accumulator. But now we've started to meter down LEV2A, which is the outlet of our condenser that is actually still has refrigerant flowing through it. So now we're slowing down that subcooled liquid coming out of our condenser, and we are opening up LEV2D, our hot gas bypass. So now we have a much more open LEV for the hot gas, and we're starting to slow down that flow of refrigerant coming out of the front portion of the coil.
Yes.
Now we're still exiting as a form of a liquid gas mixture, but now it's going to be a lot easier once we get into our branch controller to get that more hot gas supply out to our indoor units and heating. So,
Right, and I believe part of the reason also, and I may be off in this, but as I analyze the refrigerant flow, the reason why we try to keep the system from energizing 21S4A is because subcooling may be needed, even though it may be 1 or 2 units or a small capacity on cooling.
right.
But it's always easier to subcool the refrigerant at a larger coil than it is into a pipe within a pipe heat exchanger.
Yes.
See what I'm saying?
Yep.
So that's why we try to delay energizing that 121S4A to go immediately in 100% heating.
Yeah, that makes sense. So what we'll see for pulse behavior, LEV2B will be closed still. LEV2A will be at 500. If it's a 144 unit, it's still at the 3,000 pulses, but our 92s, our 120s, 96, 120s, and 72s will all be at that 41 pulses. And then LEV2D is either going to be at 3,000 or 6,000 pulses.
It's wide open.
Indicating wide open. Yep. So let's go to our next pattern. Pattern 4. This is where, again, we're still getting that higher demand. So we've closed down the LEV2A even more. So still isolating the rear portion of the coil. LEV2D still open, but we're choking down LEV2A even more.
Less liquid necessary.
Yep. So as we transition into that more heating demand, we're still in cooling mode, just systematically slowing down or reducing the amount of subcooled liquid exiting the outdoor unit.
Absolutely.
So pretty simple. Honestly, once you see it a couple times, you start to understand. And knowing the position of those valves is great because when you're looking at a maintenance tool file, that's what I look at is what's 21S4B doing? Okay, I'm segmented, which means there's no way I'm in cooling only.
Right.
We have, talked about before where, you could have a failure of LEV2B and you see frost starting to build up on a portion of the coil in cooling mode. So you got to look and see, okay, what's going on with my reversing valve? What's going on with my LEV? Is the segment, are we flowing through it backwards? Things like that. So, knowing what those are supposed to be doing given the pattern is important.
Yes.
So.
Yeah, and there's something important here. There may be somebody out there really confused, your head spinning right now. You guys didn't get this overnight.
Oh, gosh, no.
You didn't get to understand this overnight. It takes what you said. It takes practice. You have to look at it, over and over again and to figure it out, kind of analyze it, and you'll get it. And the same thing is true for the basic refrigeration, which we started off with. You got a student coming into a school. You can't just teach the refrigerant cycle once, and let them get it.
Right.
Yeah.
You know, and
No
I've
way.
mentioned this before when I was teaching at the school at entry-level kids. I spent the first 15 minutes of every day of every class, regardless of what subject you're on, with the refrigerant circuit, just going over it again, and again, just the basics. Because you need to understand how it works before you can figure out
Absolutely.
what's wrong.
Yeah. And we've done a podcast on this. This was actually the first podcast I was on called Understanding Superheat and Subcooling.
Yes.
But here's what I will say I think is one of the most challenging things, especially when I was in a van still, was figuring out is think about your liquid and gas pipe on a unitary system. You have a warmer pipe and you have a cold pipe.
Yes.
Which pipe is the subcooled one?
Exactly.
The
warmer
warmer
pipe.
pipe.
The superheated pipe is the cold one.
Right.
And that for me took so long, and not so much because I had the lack of understanding, but because your brain wants to
Yes.
say
Yes.
the hot
The
is
hot.
the superheat
Yep.
and the cold is the sub.
And I probably said this on that episode, but the way I used to explain superheat, because when refrigerant boils, it's cold to us. We don't think of it
Yes.
as boiling. But I explained it at this: if you take a bowl of water and you put it in an oven, and you turn that oven to 400 degrees, what's going to happen to that water?
It's eventually going to get to 400.
Yeah, the water is never going to get over 212 degrees.
Right.
But the steam that comes out of it is going to get to 400.
Superheated vapor.
Right? Yeah, superheated vapor. Well, if you're a monster that likes that, that's still boiling. But for us,
Right.
instead of being 400 degrees, it could be, 10 degrees or 17 or 20 below zero, that boiling point, whatever it is.
Right.
I don't remember what they are. It's boiling, even though to us it feels cold.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And to your point, Paul and Bryn, many times in my classes, I'll have one of the students be green, just getting into the industry. And when I start talking about refrigerant flow and I mention superheating and subcooling, and I'm seeing their eyes glaze, like, what are you talking about? I can't dismiss that.
Yeah.
No.
So I have to take some time during that class to explain what superheating and subcooling is.
Absolutely.
I may lose the ones that are so far ahead, but I need to get them to understand this is where you were at one time in your life.
Yes.
You need to understand this.
One of the reasons I was such a stickler for the refrigerant circuit and teaching superheat and subcooling the way I did is because when I left HVAC school, I didn't understand superheat
Right.
and subcooling. And here I am measuring something. I have no idea what I'm doing. So I forced myself to learn it. And then when I started teaching, I said, well, I'll be damned if I'm going to let my students leave here and not
Yes.
understand
Yes.
it.
Absolutely.
Regardless of the class I teach, I always go over, just like we did here, I always go over just the basic refrigerant flow circuit, the four
Yes.
bases.
Yeah.
I draw it up like a baseball diamond.
Yeah.
So I talk about
Yep.
the four bases, and then I say what bases change when we're in heat pump mode. We say the first and third base switch. And the follow-up question I have is, what about the phase change circuit? Does that change? The answer is no.
No.
We still go through the same phase change circuit. It's just that where it's happening changes.
Yeah.
Right.
And then the other thing I like to mention and bring up anytime I'm talking about refrigerant circuits is what is the PT chart showing you?
Mm-hmm.
Because if you don't understand that PT chart is showing you the saturation temperature based on the refrigerant pressure, then you'll never have a full
Understand.
grasp
No.
of
Yes.
superheat and subcooling.
That PT
Right.
chart only works when vapor and liquid exist at the same
At the same time.
Correct.
together.
Yes.
If that's not the case, if you get a refrigerant tank and there's nothing in there but vapor, throw out the PT chart. It doesn't
Yes.
help you,
Right.
right? And if it's all same thing, if it's all liquid, so that's important. And Austin was on a few episodes ago, and he mentioned some of the calls that we get. And we're sitting here at this event. You see, we got all kinds of these tool manufacturers here. And some of these tools are great. We're looking at, people can't see it, but we're looking at a thing over there that shows the digital gauges.
Mhm.
Right? It's great. That's a great tool. It gives you the subcooling, the superheat. It gives you the PT chart automatically.
Yeah.
But that's not what you should be using if you're new.
Exactly.
Right.
If you're new, you should be measuring superheat
Measuring
and subcooling
pipe temperature.
the old-fashioned way and
And using
figuring
a
it out
PT
with
chart.
a PT chart.
Yep.
I never used the PT chart. I just used my gauges because it gives you the temperature.
Yes.
And I never looked at the pressure. If somebody asked me what was the pressure, I don't know. I can tell what the temperature was. The evaporator was 35 degrees. I can tell you that much.
Right.
But I don't look at pressures. I look at temperature because to me, that makes more sense.
Yes.
So,
Now,
but-
but that's one of the things, again, like I mentioned in classes, for those of you using those digital gauges, why is it so important that you select the refrigerant type? It's so that manifold can upload the PT chart.
yes.
That's it. And so that is how I get that
You're
around those folks
absolutely
that
right.
do. They've only worked with digital gauges. They don't know, they don't remember the dials that had the different PTs based on what refrigerant you were using, right? It didn't have the R22 and the 410. We're in a situation now where new technicians are probably only going to use digital manifolds.
which is a shame.
It is.
It is. So
I'm
as long
old
as they
school.
understand what the system is doing, just like anything, if you understand what the manifold is doing when you select your refrigerant and why that's important, then it's okay, because then you have the understanding of saturation, superheat, subcooling.
Yes.
All right, let's get off our soapbox and let's
Well, it's
go.
important. It's
I know it is. Let's go. So we're gonna go to a first heating pattern, right?
Yes. So we've switched to heating mode, which means what about the reversing valves, Juan?
Now they're both energized.
Got it.
Because now we're in heating, and when I teach this class, I tell them there's really no pattern because we need the full capacity of the outdoor coil to draw heat from the air that's blowing across it. So, we can modulate the LEVs depending on capacity, but we're using 100% of the outdoor unit coil capacity.
You got it. Yep. So no segmenting going on in the heating only pattern. The one thing I like to mention is if you ever looked at our wiring or our refrigerant diagrams, if you've ever attended a class, if you're looking at the YouTube right now, you'll notice that even in heating mode, we are exiting on the same pipe.
Yeah.
Yes.
So I do not call our pipes coming out of the outdoor unit a liquid and a gas pipe.
Correct.
I call it a high pressure and a low pressure pipe, because it could be just liquid, it could be just gas, it could be a mixture,
Both.
but it is always high pressure. Now, Juan, why do we have to exit on the same pipe regardless of mode?
Because we have to go in the same pipe at the branch controller.
You got it, right? What's that first up at our branch controller?
The gas-liquid separator.
Yep.
And what does the gas-liquid separator do?
It separates the gas from the
Gas
liquid.
and liquid. So we had a guy, let's just digress here for a moment. We had a speaker here, I forget his name,
Eugene Silverstein.
Silverstein, yeah, a smart guy. And he was talking about when you read Hebrew, in Hebrew, you read from right to left. English is left to right.
It's Greek?
No, it's Hebrew.
He thought it was Greek.
I said Greek.
It's Hebrew. Right? So a pressure reducing valve is a valve that reduces the pressure.
Yeah.
That's how we tell what it is. So a gas liquid separator separates
Separates.
liquid from gas.
Yeah,
Yes.
exactly. Yep.
This is an easy industry to figure out what it is.
Very
It's not
easy.
terrible. Air separators.
Except for one of my students years ago who went on a test. I said, "What is the king valve?" And his answer was, "King of the valves."
Yeah.
Which
we were
is-
trying to come up with examples that didn't work yesterday, and I was like, expansion tank. It tanks the expansion.
Yeah,
Well,
yeah.
kind of does.
Yeah,
It kind of does. It prevents the expansion. It tanks it.
Yep.
So anyway, we're looking at the outdoor unit again. Both reversing valves are energized. We're doing all of our condensing inside now using the indoor unit coils. The beauty of that is once we start to get into mixed modes, rather than coming back to the outdoor unit to evaporate, we're just going to reroute that subcooled liquid from our indoor units in heating. We're going to further subcool it, and then we're going to go to those indoor units in cooling. That's where we'll become that low pressure. Now, if we're in 100% heating mode, however, there are no indoor units that are doing the evaporating, so we're reliant on our outdoor coil to do that work.
Yes.
Now, you'll notice if you are watching on the YouTube or we're looking at the screen now, LEV2A and 2B, which you would think are the metering devices to the outdoor coil, are wide open.
Wide open. There's no metering.
So where is the metering happening?
At the BC.
At the BC, which blew my mind the first time I saw
LEV3.
it. Yep, LEV3 and even LEV4. So in
Yes,
heating mode,
on the heating
LEV4
mode.
starts to modulate.
Yep.
And they're basically your second base at the branch controller.
Yep.
Now we're coming back to our outdoor unit. And really at that point, we get to our heat exchanger. That's where the evaporating happens
Yes.
because that's where our coil is and the fan. So pressure's already been dropped. We just haven't hit our fan coil yet. Fan coil's at the outdoor unit, comes out as a low pressure, low temp, superheated vapor, back to the accumulator, back to the compressor.
And that at that moment is when, that one kid that is green. And I ask him, well, what is the relationship of the temperature of that coil versus the temperature of the air moved around across it? For us to remove heat from that air, that coil surface has to be colder than the temperature of that air.
You can't transfer heat without a temperature difference.
Without temperature differential. So that even at 20 below zero, that coil has to be colder than 20 below zero for us to draw heat from that 20 degree below zero temperature.
Yeah. Yep. And another thing that we'll notice too is that in heating mode, this is with our EPs and with our hyperheats. You won't see it on our standard, but thankfully Not thankfully, but we don't offer the standard models anymore.
Not
We
anymore.
only do the high efficiency and the hyperheat. We have now LEV4 that becomes part of the equation.
Yes.
So LEV4 is a metering device, and it is metering directly to our compressor.
Yes.
And all that's doing is offering flash injection of a low temperature refrigerant so that the compressor doesn't overheat when it's operating at high frequency for long periods of time in cold weather.
And the LEV4 that we're referring to is the one at the outdoor unit.
Correct.
Right.
Yep.
And that's going to inject just a cool vapor into the head of that compressor.
Yes.
Yes.
And I think through my, just digging around, and these are all, at least this is kind of an assumption, but why we meter at the branch controller to our outdoor unit is because if we look at the outdoor unit, LEV4 doesn't go through a tube-and-tube heat exchanger to
Correct.
drop temperature.
Right.
Typically with our residential equipment, like a
Yeah.
smart multi or our
Yes.
hyperheats on the residential side, the metering device to flash inject actually goes through a tube-and-tube heat exchanger. And that's how we're doing that phase change, so that we make sure we have vapor going to that flash injection port. Well, here it's already been flashed. So then when we lower that pressure again at the outdoor unit, it's not necessarily important that we go through a tube-and-tube. It's already dropped temperature enough where we can flash inject.
So that's all the patterns, right?
The only other one that we could
Pattern
talk
2.
about is pattern 2 with heating, and this only comes into play when you have twinned units.
Yes.
So if you've got two outdoor units that are the piping is twinned together to make up capacity, what you may see is LEV2D open to 1250 or 1,000 pulses. It depends on size of the equipment,
Yes.
but that's for liquid balance
Yeah.
mode, and it's basically trying to manage the refrigerant between the two outdoor units.
Yep.
Yeah. If you're looking on YouTube, or if you later on, or if you've ever looked at one of these refrigerant diagrams in the manual, notice all these little components that are on there. There's thermistors everywhere.
Yes.
Right? There's thermistors everywhere in the indoor unit, and the outdoor unit, in the branch box. And that's what the system is looking at. The brains, the little computer inside this thing is looking at all those readings, and it's going to decide what pattern I'm going to be in.
Yep.
It's going to look at that. It has targets it wants to achieve. It's going to look at everything. Do I have the right temperature here and there, and compare it? And it's complicated.
Yes.
We could explain it, but we'd have to understand it all first.
Absolutely.
But it's really, you don't really need to know it. To be a technician, to diagnose this equipment, you don't need to know what those targets are. You just need to know that all these temperatures are being looked at. And some of these, I still think, in my opinion, the most important temperature there is TH4. We've talked about that
Yes.
before. That's the discharge line temperature. It tells you a lot. But look at those and then study these patterns if you want to learn them. And we go over this in the Advanced City Multi-Class.
Correct.
Yeah.
And we actually do a exercise where we actually watch the system on maintenance tool go through these patterns.
Yeah. And we're probably going to do, now that we're hiring a few new people, we've hired, I think in the last 2 or 3 months, we've hired 2 new guys. Well, 3 if you include one instructional designer. We got another guy, young kid, starting in April. And when we get up to speed, we're going to be doing more and more of these TechLink videos.
Yes.
And
Little
Rob,
short
he's been
little
on the
videos.
podcast, but he's only been here a couple months as well. So he's relatively Rob.
Oh, Rob, that's right. Yeah, that's true. I thought you said Ralph. I said, what?
I heard Ralph.
No, Ralph's
Yeah.
a vet. Ralph's a vet.
Yeah, Ralph is YouTube famous.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I will say that of all the podcasts that we've recorded, this is probably one of the most important to watch the YouTube video on.
Yeah, this is.
Just check it out. If you are actually interested in the content, just watch it on the YouTube because you actually get to show the refrigerant flow.
Right. Yeah. Graphics.
I understand that audio is more convenient sometimes.
You can
but-
also look at a diagram of a refrigerant diagram of an outdoor unit. And kind
Right.
of see
but
it
it's
as
not
well.
color coded.
No, it's not.
That's helpful.
Yeah,
just,
it is.
just don't do it while you're driving.
Exactly. Right. That's
Yeah. And if we gave you a headache, if your head is spinning, we're sorry. But,
Listen, sometimes it's fun to talk technical stuff.
It is.
can't all
It
be
is.
food.
No, it can't. Why not?
Yeah, that's the other podcast.
I would rather have, and I wouldn't mind having an all food podcast. No one would listen to me, but I wouldn't mind having that. I wouldn't mind cooking something. We need to set up a
Oh,
camera.
I would love
We need
it.
to set up a camera on my flat top,
Yes.
my Weber griddle, and start cooking stuff.
We should, do a podcast called like the Metis Kitchen, and it's just we'll get those aprons,
Here we go.
Oh, yeah.
the aprons, and
Secrets
we'll,
are coming. We can't talk about that.
and
Everyone will want one if you start saying
that's
that.
true. And do some recipes. Bert Kreischer does something like that.
Who?
He's a stand-up comic.
Never heard of
He
him.
cooks with other comics, and they just cook food together, and it's really funny.
Is this the
Great
guy
show.
that doesn't wear a shirt?
It is
The machine.
the animal, or the machine.
Machine.
Yeah, thank you.
I've seen him once. I just, who's the Italian guy? It's always talking about growing up Italian and his.
Sebastian Maniscalco.
Yeah, that guy's
He's
funny.
the best.
Oh, he is
Yeah.
funny as heck.
Yeah.
because it's the Portuguese culture and Italian cultures are very similar.
Awesome.
That's fine. So that's it.
Yeah.
All right.
All right. I guess we'll see everybody on the next one.
Yes.
Yeah. Absolutely.
It's been a good one.
Let's go find some flour hors d'oeuvres.
Yes.
No, I want to go back to the sushi place.
Yeah.
Definitely.
And
We're going to do that tonight.
Well, there is an all-you-can-eat buffet, too. It's very good.
Yeah.
But you know how I feel about all-you-can-eat buffets.
Yeah, we can
I'll
see it.
be. I make sure that they hate to see me coming. Whatever it
Yes.
costs, I'm eating 10 times that amount of food.
Yeah, the only one that goes
Paul's
to an
first
all-you-can-eat
question,
buffet
yeah.
finds out it's a
Paul's
discount.
first question when he works in a restaurant like that is, I need a flat rate price.
Yeah. It's all you can eat, not all you can eat all day.
Yeah.
You leave now.
Yeah, who was that? That was another comic.
Yeah.
You go now.
Oh, no, that's a guy.
He's from Massachusetts.
Yeah, the big guy.
Oh, it's gonna kill me until I
Oh,
know
no,
his name.
it is. It's, is it Louis? It's not Louis.
No.
Um,
If we find it, we'll put it.
We're
I can
figuring it
he
out.
passed away.
Yes.
Sadly.
Yes.
I can't think of his name,
Oh,
but
he was
yeah.
great. You bet here for hour.
Yeah. He's.
Go now.
I'm sure there's somebody in the audience screaming at us the name.
Oh, it's driving me crazy. I can see his face. It's not Louis.
It's not. You're thinking Louis Anderson, but it's not.
No, it's not
It's Chris
Louis.
Panette.
Yes, Chris. Yeah, Panette,
Yeah,
right?
Or John Panette.
Panetta,
sorry.
Panetta.
John Panette.
I thought it was Panetta.
It doesn't matter.
Panette,
It's close
yeah,
enough. John
yes,
Panette.
John Panette. Yeah, he's funny.
Yeah, he's great.
You know what? Maybe we should.
Sorry,
switch,
guys.
Maybe we should switch our banter from food to comedians.
Yeah, I can talk about it all day. Yeah.
All right, so we're
All right,
done.
guys. Awesome.
All right.
See you on the next one.
Hey,
All right.
hi, Lachlan.
Adios.
All right, bye.